A Celtic State of Mind. It is Tuesday afternoon, it's 12:30. I'm Natasha Meikle and I'm delighted to be joined by Brian Denning and Paul John Dykes. We are mixing it up a bit this Tuesday due to various other commitments of our normal Tuesday club members. But Brian, Paul, John, how are you both? Nice to be joined by you guys on this Tuesday.
It is. It's a good lineup. I mean, sometimes Ange does that to us, doesn't he? He just throws in a wee surprise lineup. So that's what we're doing on a Tuesday, I think, Natasha.
Well, that's it.
It's a bit of squad rotation, isn't it? It's a bit of squad rotation just to freshen up the squad in the season running. So
right. So who am I? James McCarthy.
You're James McCarthy,
the forgotten man.
Absolutely no comments about who is who and who's the Jota and who's the Abada and who's the Maeda, but it's great to have everyone here anyway, and we've got plenty to talk about today. We will be reviewing the weekend's game. We'll be talking about that Motherwell performance, what went wrong, what might have went well, taking some of the positives from it, as well as looking ahead to the weekend's cup tie. And in the last hour or so, we've also had confirmation of the post-split fixtures. For anyone who hasn't seen those yet, we start the post-split with a potential title clincher at Tynecastle on Sunday, May the 7th. We follow that up with a trip to Ibrox on the 13th of May, home to St Mirren on the 20th of May, away to Hibs on the 24th of May, and finishing off with Aberdeen at home on the 27th of May. So, Brian, I'll come to you first. We know that if we beat Hearts on the 7th of May, we win the league. Easy as that. Exciting prospect, isn't it?
Yeah. If only it was that easy. But I think, as long-term viewers know, I'm a bit of a romantic, and I think there's sometimes football tells brilliant stories. And just think, Ange's first game was at Tynecastle and lost. And then they could win their 2 in a row at Tynecastle. There's a really nice symmetry and sort of cyclical nature to that. So I'm looking forward to it. And then it means our comrades across the city need to use a wee guard of honour who we visit the end of the week after. So that'd be nice. I'm sure they'll honour that. They wouldn't be petty enough to not do it, I would imagine. So, but look, I think going to Tynecastle is always hard. But again, if you can't win the league at Ibrox, it's nice to win it there. So I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, the only frustration for me about it being at Tynecastle, and Andrew comes in the YouTube comments to say something similar, is that so many fans will be locked out of it. You know, as Andrew says, TV given priority over fans again. Only a small number will now get the chance to see Celtic win the league in person with the small allocations we get. Andrew's watching on YouTube. Totally agree with you. And if you are watching on YouTube, please do get involved in the chat and remember to subscribe to the channel. But coming back to Andrew's point, it's one I agree with. It is frustrating that, you know, we're potentially getting less than 1,000 tickets for Tynecastle at the moment. So such a small percentage of our fans are going to see what is potentially a title clinching game. And if you're not at Tynecastle for that game, the next league game you're going to get to see is on the 20th of May, because as we know, we don't get tickets for Ibrox. So that's a long gap without seeing Celtic play in the league. And I do understand it for teams like Hearts who are choosing to sell their tickets to their own fans, so make the Celtic allocation smaller. It's frustrating when you see empty stadiums and they choose not to increase the Celtic allocation, but Hearts are, with credit to them, a team who does tend to sell out their own allocation, so our allocation is smaller. But Paul John, it's frustrating that so many are going to end up missing this game, isn't it?
It's massively frustrating, and it's something that we've been speaking about all season, and every time Celtic bring it up or we bring it up as fans, we get called entitled, spoiled, all this kind of rhetoric. And Scottish football is one of the best supported leagues in European football, yet it is ran amateurishly. It really is. And, we've probably brought the point up for different reasons throughout the season where we've not been able to get tickets. There's been Celtic fans standing outside stadiums, trying to get tickets. Natasha, you'll have seen them. You go to the away games. And, the way that it's been managed, the way that their own business has been managed is amateurish. And then when it comes to the business end of the season, we could talk all day about the fixtures and how we've got 3 away games against 2 home games and all the rest of it. But the bottom line is, we're going to win the league and virtually no fans will see it, in the flesh. And that, for me, people will say it's a luck of the draw, it could have happened anyway, etc., etc. But at the same time, we used to have a really good complement of Celtic fans at away grounds, and it's been minimised and it's been squeezed, and it's been squeezed all season. This is a different type of dynamic to add into the mix, but yeah, it does frustrate me, Natasha, when we've got, for me, we actually do have a really, really good product that so many people buy into in this country, and every single time, be it officialdom or broadcasting deals or fixtures or even the split. That's another discussion. Do you think the split is a good thing? Does it work? Should we do away with it? All these different discussions, and I just think it constantly shines a light. Even the fact the fixtures were late, Natasha, yesterday. The fixtures were meant to be announced yesterday, but they were late. That's just Scottish football over the back. So pretty disappointing. But in saying all of that, I want to win it at Tynecastle. I don't want to delay it. I'm reading about guard the honours and everything at Ibrox. Win it as soon as you can win it.
That's right. I absolutely agree with that. I want to get it wrapped up, and I'm sure Ange and the players absolutely want to get it wrapped up as well. Because after that, Brian, we do have the prospect of heading to Ibrox as champions. And if we don't win at Tynecastle, then we go to Ibrox with the prospect of becoming champions, which are both exciting prospects in themselves. You do just want to get it wrapped up as soon as you can, don't you? I know there is certainly discussions taking place on social media about the prospect of winning at Ibrox, but I'm sure you're with me. Let's get it wrapped up at Tynecastle and go to Ibrox as champions.
Yeah, I would much rather that. I always think it's it's just good to get the job done, get it over the line, and then sort of move on about your business. I don't get the impression it's going to go into Angie's thinking in any way. I don't think that's going to matter too much, and I think going to Ibrox as champions with that extra bit of swagger, and hopefully after winning the semi-final as well, it would be quite a nice occasion regardless. So I'm not too concerned. And it's interesting to talk about the fixtures in the organisation. Paul and I have been ranting for a few weeks about the lack of joined-up thinking between the SFA and the SPFL and everybody else. And it's always interesting to me that it's a random draw, but Police Scotland can go and say, look, we don't want it to be the first game to be at Ibrox in case it causes trouble. So by its nature, it's not that random. And I just think two away games as your first two fixtures, it's a bit poor. I think it's a common sense approach could have changed that very easily. And you could have still avoided, going to Ibrox early if that was the case. So I think it was, I don't know, it leaves a bad taste in the mouth, to be honest. But again, we face this sort of stuff all the time, and we don't complain about it. We just keep on winning. We keep on racking up the trophies, and Ange will take it in stride.
Absolutely. We are very much looking forward to getting this one over the line. It does feel like it has been coming for a while now. But Paul John, you were talking about marketing the game and the product that we have. In Scottish football, we all love it, of course we do, but it's such a unique and special product, and we could do so much better when it comes to promoting that and marketing it. And one of the things we've talked about is, having Celtic potentially clinch the title with hardly any fans there. But the other thing that surprised me when we're taking, our Celtic view of this for a minute is the games that Sky have chosen. And I can understand why, particularly a lot of the bottom six teams, especially the ones who are still going to have a lot to play for, are frustrated that they're not going to be able to see these games on TV. They're not being publicised when Celtic and Rangers games that are going to be effectively meaningless come the end of the season are going to be the ones that Sky choose, instead of these games where there's teams at the bottom with a lot to play for.
Yeah, you can imagine, Natasha, the meeting, at Sky Sports headquarters where they're trying to figure out what fixtures have we got. Well, try and get as many Celtic and Rangers fixtures as possible. And you look at the bottom of that table, like you say, it's like the top of the Championship, loads to play for. There's loads of clubs involved in that relegation zone. Ross County, Dundee United, Kilmarnock, St Johnstone aren't safe yet. And there's loads. Every single point's going to be a prisoner. There's going to be some really tension-filled, dramatic games at the bottom of the table, and that also feeds that narrative that clubs that have got decent fan bases like Dundee United, and they speak about it's all about Celtic and Rangers, isn't it? And well, the answer is yeah, it is, because that's the kind of decisions that are made. And there's going to be some really interesting fixtures at the bottom of the table, Natasha. We're going to miss them. But yeah, it is a big bugbear of mine because it comes into discussion, and Brian and I talk about aspirations of other teams and all this kind of thing. I guess the other discussion point will be, right, okay, they don't want Celtic to win the league at Ibrox, right? I understand that, but I mean, just look at what that atmosphere is going to be like at Ibrox. If we go there as champions, Natasha, and we've spoken about this, the very reason that we're not there as fans is because the club don't think it's safe. And then the players haven't been safe because there's broken bottles in the goal mouth. The staff haven't been safe because one of them's been hit with a bottle, which resulted in jail time. Fran Alonso, so the management aren't safe because he's been attacked by a member of staff coming out of Ibrox. And the last time they won the league, even the public aren't safe because they rioted in Glasgow. So you think to yourself, what is that atmosphere going to be like at Ibrox? That's a big concern for me. Massive.
It's a concern for me too. And it's probably a concern that Celtic are taking very seriously behind the scenes and making sure that appropriate security measures are in place. But you do begin to understand the club's position more and more if you're all those things that you're talking about that have taken place and have the potential to take place again. Imagine adding 600 or 700 fans into that mix, into a small corner where they've not been proven to be safe before. So you can understand why the club have said, if you can't guarantee the safety of the fans, then we're not taking the tickets. And that decision probably starts to become more and more understandable with the prospect of that game coming up, Brian, where Celtic do have the prospect of going to Rangers as champions, with Rangers, depending on what happens in the Cup semi-final, with their season essentially over.
Yeah, and look, it's just a damning indictment that of Scottish football in general, and particularly that club, that fans can't feel safe going to a game. I mean, that's the headline, right? Almost the ticket allocation stuff. That's kind of secondary when there's such concerns over fan safety and safety of players and safety of staff. Yeah, you understand why they took those precautions, but there's got to be more to be done to either punish that behaviour and prevent it from happening in the first place. Like we smirked about the Fran Alonso thing, but that was a disgrace. The fact that guy was a 6-game ban, kept his job. I mean, absolute disgrace. If I went up and stick a loaf in somebody next door, I'm not getting a 60-game ban for the house. Do you know what I mean? It's terrible, and it shouldn't be happening. And it's as I say, it's a damning indictment. If they celebrate, there's trouble. If they win, there's trouble. If they lose, there's trouble. If they're protesting, there's trouble. There's a common denominator here, and it's not everybody else. So I just think that when you're talking about these ticket allocations and safety and stuff, it's just, I think sometimes when you're in the bubble, you don't realise how ridiculous it actually sounds. But it's astonishing to me. It really is.
It is.
You'd still take a ticket though, Natasha, if you got one, wouldn't you?
Of course I would. Of course I would.
Definitely.
Natasha's a hard case, though. She'd be the one giving out the headbutts, I think. I think she'd be pretty safe.
Oh, Brian, you know me better than that. But before we look too far ahead and look at towards that Tynecastle fixture, I do want to chat a bit about the game at the weekend because it's still fresh. It's only Tuesday. We've not had a chance to catch up on it yet. And we will need to perform a lot better at Tynecastle than we did against Motherwell, because we're talking about this title clincher at Tynecastle, which is very exciting, but we need to win it. And our performances of late have been a little bit concerning. That game against Motherwell wasn't good. The second half against Kilmarnock wasn't good. And without being entitled and thinking we should win every game or anything like that, the level set by Ange and the team means that these performances and that result against Motherwell is disappointing. We can't be too disappointed at ending the weekend another point clear in pursuit of the title, but I think for me it was more about the performance that really concerned me slightly. I want to have a bit of a chat with you guys today about what went wrong, what we can learn from it. It is important to remain level-headed. It's natural these performances happen, but it doesn't make it any less frustrating, does it, Paul? And what do you put your finger on as wasn't quite there against Motherwell at the weekend?
I think Colin and I had a good chat about it yesterday once the dust had settled a wee bit, because you've got that frustration on Saturday, asking yourself, why is this not working? And in the first half, it probably took Callum McGregor to do what he's done quite a few times and grab the game by the scruff of the neck. And, it was a speculative effort, but I think it was his second of the game. He got a wee deflection and he opens the score. And you think to yourself, right, we've broken the deadlock. We're going to win 2 or 3-0 here. And it didn't happen. So I'm looking at two different things. The first thing is, I think we should already have enough in terms of the squad depth to deal with Motherwell at home, even with the big players missing. But we did have some real game-changing players missing, and the sooner they're back, the better. Jota, Abada and Hatate. But again, I just don't think we were as clinical as we have been. And a couple of the chances that I think were gilt-edged, Maeda, the through ball from Haksabanovic, I thought he was really poor at Haksabanovic, but there was one passage of play where he did really, really well to win the ball back. He had lost possession. He wins the ball back, dinks it over. Maeda's got to score that. The Vata cross for O's got to score that. And of course, Kyogo with a wee dink over the goalie. You're thinking, just put that away and the game's put to bed. Starfelt, I wouldn't give him a hard time. He should get that on target, but it's not really a out-and-out chance like the other three. So we weren't clinical enough. And then when the substitutes were made, and by the way, I'm a big advocate of giving Rocco Vata game time, and I'm a champion of him, and I thought he got a bit of a hard time. I don't think it was the right sub, because I'm watching that thinking, right, you need a David Turnbull to just strike one from distance, because that's what he does. And he came on with 3 minutes to go. So that isn't a dig at Vata, because obviously we had conversations about it on the WhatsApp group, and I thought he played well. Loads to learn, but I thought he did okay. But I would have thought Turnbull was the change, because you need a guy like him, 25 yards out, he's going to ping one. He might just get you that win. You win 2-1, and you're probably not focusing on the performance then as much.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think, it's something that Colin said on the show yesterday that I agreed with, was that we've played worse than that and come away with the win. And I think that is true when you look back on it and the dust has settled a bit. And Brian, for me, even when Motherwell scored, that's a great goal by Van Veen, by the way. I thought he played very, very well. But even when he did score that goal, I still expected us to get it over the line. And it was surprising that we didn't, because we so regularly do. And for me, that was a bit of a surprise for me. And I also want to bring up Rocco Vata, because Paul Johns touched on it there as well, and I completely agree with what you said. That's 2 weeks in a row now that Vata has put the ball on a plate for O, and O hasn't scored the chance. He came on and he had 15 minutes with added time as well, and he had an expected assist rate of 0.6 with only 50 minutes on the park. That's more than some of the guys who'd played 60 minutes before him. And it was different for him as well. We're used to seeing him come on as a sub maybe when the game is won, and when we're a little bit more comfortable. But he came on and was expected to be game-changing. And he came on against O'Donnell, who had just come on as well, so he wasn't tired. So it wasn't like he was going up against a fullback who'd played against a Maeda and a Abada or a Jota for 60 or 70 minutes. He was fresh too. So it was different from giving him some minutes against a tired fullback after the game was gone. You were asking Rocco Vata to come on and win a game. And like Paul John said, there was a bit of split opinion in the WhatsApp group, Brian. Some people were saying his performance was a highlight. Others are saying he's not cutting it. But for me, it was just probably slightly too big an expectation on him. I think we need to have a bit of patience with a player like Vata. He stepped up from the Lowland League to this. That's a massive, massive step. And I think he probably needs more game time at this level. He's going up against this experienced Scottish international rather than a Lowland League player, and I think he did okay. Like I say, he put that one on a plate for O. O should have scored. Again, you're looking for a winger to come on, put good balls into the box for your strikers, and he did that. And I thought he was a positive, Brian.
Yeah, I sort of broadly agree with most of it. The only thing I slightly disagree on is that I think, if you're bringing him, if he's in the squad and he's ready to play and I just get faith, then I think, yeah, absolutely bring him on and try and get him to win the game. I don't have any problem with that. Well, there you go, Kev Green agrees. I think if you're wearing that jersey and you're ready to play, I don't think it should matter if you're young or not. I think, and really, you look at it, the two best crosses of the game, when they sort of drink past the players and bounced it over for Starfelt, and then the pitch perfect one for O. So another day, he's coming on 50 minutes and then a 17 turned 18-year-old to save the day. So I think Vata, for me, I think the criticism of him, I can't understand. When he came on for his cameo the other day, I think against Kilmarnock, he had the best cross of the game by a distance. And so for me, in terms of Vata, I think he absolutely earned his place in the squad. And if you're going to give players pass marks, I think he was probably one of the only ones that came out with pass marks. Maybe him, McGregor. I think Iwata didn't have much to do. He's not that type of player that's going to pick open a defence. Maybe they be Tumblewood. In terms of what went wrong, I think it was a perfect storm of things, because Motherwell obviously figured that what we do is we get the ball at the 18-yard box and put it straight across goal, and Kyogo bangs it in. That's pretty much what we do. So they were very, very good at blocking that at the front post. So they defended that very well, to be fair to them. Where the criticism comes from me is that we kept trying it and kept trying it and kept trying it. We sort of never had another idea, which usually we do. Usually we can. It reminded me of the games last season against Livingston, when it looks as if we're banging our heads against the wall and doing the same thing, which wasn't working. It was a bit like that against Motherwell. And then the other crosses we're putting in were just getting absolutely skied. Alistair Johnson's coming for loads of praise, but I thought his crossing was really poor. I thought Moy was poor again. So there was a number of players off it. The question would be then, are we concerned about it? And I don't think so, because the last time a lot of the team played badly was when we beat Old St Mirren. And then after that, they picked up a full head of steam. We've not had too many performances like that in a row. I know you mentioned the game at the Kilmarnock second half and it wasn't great, but by that time we were 4-0 up, should be 5 or 6. So it's a different, way of analysing it. So I have full confidence for the semi-final and full confidence for the games after the split. I think it was a wee bit of a blip. And it's almost better having all your players playing badly in one game and it goes wrong, because then you know it's a freak. It's not, a problem that's recurring. I think we'll be fine next week. Even if Hatate and Jota aren't back, I still think we're more than enough in the tank.
Yeah, I think so. I think people aren't getting too carried away with the fact that it was a draw and not the best performance in the world. I think everybody is remaining relatively level-headed. It happens. It will happen over the course of the season. And the important thing is how you address that going forward. And it maybe does just give the players a little shake that they need in the lead up to a semi-final. We know what the run-in looks like now. We know there's hard games coming up. We've got the biggest game of the season left coming up at the weekend with that cup semi-final. This will give players that added incentive to make sure that they're involved in that. Players who perhaps think that they weren't quite at their best in the second half of Kilmarnock, who weren't maybe at their best at home against Motherwell, they are going to be putting in the 110% effort at Lennoxtown this week to prove that they should keep their place, because there's guys waiting in the wing, there's guys ready to come back from injury, and I think that that'll help keep the standards high. I think the players themselves, players like McGregor and Taylor and Joe Hart, they'll ensure that the standards are high. They're experienced. They know when the team aren't firing in all cylinders, like they're maybe not at the moment. They'll know that, and they'll be driving and demanding more. And I think that'll make for a really good week of training at Lennoxtown ahead of this game on the weekend, which is going to be absolutely massive, Paul.
It is. I'm thinking back to, the dressing room, Natasha. You could just imagine the type of players that will always have it. They'll always be on it. And you think you've mentioned 3 of them, Taylor, Hart, and McGregor will be 3 of the guys. I think probably Ralston would be one of them, even though he's not on the first team a lot of the time. And all the way through the ages, you think about the dressing rooms that Celtic have had, and you've always had that hardcore that they're almost like gaffers on the pitch. You've got McGregor as a captain, but the other guys are leaders. They're not going to let the standards drop. They'll know that was a bad performance against Motherwell. And I was looking just at last season, where I think our best performance was the 3-0 game against Rangers in February. And I was looking at the game before that, against Dundee United, where we score a last-minute winner, and it's Abada. And you're maybe looking at that performance thinking, we really struggled to break this team down, and it was a last-minute goal from Abada. And you're always going into these games a wee bit apprehensive. And we went out and absolutely obliterated Rangers 3-0 that night. So you can read too much sometimes into the performance just before a game. And I think that when we go out there on Sunday, it will be a completely different Celtic that we see. I really do. I hope some of the injury worries are alleviated an hour before kick-off, because we do miss the big players. And, Jota against Rangers has done so well, as has Abada, as has Hatate. They're 3 big players against Rangers. If 2 of them, I don't think we'll get all our Christmases at once and get all 3 of them. If 2 of them make it, then you're going in with a real boost and loads of confidence, I would say, an hour before kickoff, if 2 of their names are on the team sheet.
The other thing to remember as well is it's the effect it has. Sorry, Natasha. It's the effect it has on the opponents, because if I spoke this week Yogo when we likened him to, when we were talking about the debate of is the best striker since Larsson. And I said maybe not the best actual player, but in terms of fitting the mould. And what he does is when he's on the park, even if he's not doing much, the opposition always thinks he's going to score. If guys like Hatate are on the park or coming off the bench, or you look over and you see Jota warming up after you've hit him up in the Ada for an hour, psychologically, that the teams in their mind, every team, whether admit it, is going to think, oh, hold on, this is going to be a rough 10 minutes. So that galvanising effect isn't just in your own squad, it's the effect on the opposition without even having to do much. So I think certainly getting them back would be a huge boost, but I would hope that there's enough in the tank.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And I'm hoping, like you, that we'll have at least two of those 3 that are being talked about back, because I think our strength and depth is getting tested, Brian. You talk about the players that we have on the bench, the players we have on the pitch. It's getting stretched a little more than we have seen over the course of the season. And we so often spoke over the course of this season about that strength and depth and how important a part of our season it has been. We've had that bench that's so strong that it walks into the starting 11 of every other team in the league. And with the 5-sub rule, the depth and quality of our squads, for me, has actually been the differential this season. But we have noticed it in the last couple of games. I think we have noticed that we've missed Hatate, we've missed Jota, we've missed being able to bring players like Abada on, and we're maybe not quite hitting the standards that we're used to without them. So, Brian, I'll put it to you first. If Jota, Abada, and Hatate are all fit, do they all go back into the starting lineup for the semi-final? I mean, for me, I think Jota walks straight back in. He's not been out that long. He's been a very important player for us. He's been excellent against Rangers. I think he does walk straight back into the team. And on balance, I think Hatate probably does too. I know he's been out 4 or 5 weeks. It's a relatively long spell. And I have been really impressed with Iwata. I think he brings great composure to the middle of the park. I think he's really good on the ball. But I do think we have missed Hatate. There is the risk in bringing him back and he's not fully ready. I think we've seen that with Aaron Moy a bit over the last couple of games. He's maybe not been quite at the level he was before his injury, and he's not been quite up to it. And can we risk that with Hatate? Obviously an entirely different player who's been thrown in at the deep end before and proven himself. But for me, if Jota is fit and if Hatate is fit, I think they both go back into the squad, into the starting 11.
I think Jota, certainly. I think I'm a big fan of Haksabanovic, but the dynamic with him and Maeda doesn't really work because he cuts in and Maeda cuts in. So you're losing that traditional winger, whereas Jota gives you that something different. I'm not sure what's been happening with Forrest if he's still injured as well. So I think certainly Jota goes in. Hatate, I wouldn't start just because I think when we're going to play Rangers in the semi, I think Iwata's going to be really key at breaking up their press. Because you saw it at Parkhead that they pressed really high and they pressed really aggressively, and it sort of it made us make a few mistakes at first. So I think having Iwata in there just to break that and that real physical presence. I also think, Callum Gregor's talents are obvious, but O'Reilly in that midfield is really good at winning the ball back for a forward position as well. So I think I would start with them, and then if it's not quite that creative spot, then you've got Hatate to come on. And you kind of, the beauty of Hatate is you both know and don't know what he's going to give you, right? Because he just does things you don't expect. He's sort of that maverick, which is what you need. And I think coming off the bench would be ideal for that. So if you had Kalmak, O'Reilly and Iwata sort of solid in the middle of the park, help them break up their press and win the ball back. And then when you need a bit of magic, Hatate coming on. Abada, I'm not sure what's happening with Abada, if it's what the nature of the injury is, or if it's an attitude thing, or it's a Yakimakis situation where they think he's probably off or not. But certainly if if he's available, he would come on as well as a sub.
Robert Ingram comes on YouTube and said, if Hatate's fit, he will start against Rangers, a must. Paul John, do you agree with that? If you take an ideal scenario and we've got Hatate, Moy, McGregor, Iwata, O'Reilly, all training well, fully fit, ready to go, who is playing in the middle of that park at the weekend?
Well, I was asked that question last week when we were talking to John Hughes, so I'm going to now contradict myself and disagree with Robert, right? Because I said that my ideal trio in the midfield was McGregor and Hatate and O'Reilly. That's what I said. But I'm looking at the 3-2 game, and I think the period of time where we really controlled this game is when we took off Moy and we brought on Iwata. And from that moment, we controlled the game. We got 2 goals ahead, and it was Iwata, McGregor and O'Reilly. And then Rangers started getting back into the game when we took off O'Reilly. We changed the shape a wee bit. So I just think that it worked. It worked against them with McGregor, Iwata and O'Reilly. And as much as I love Hatate, and normally and ordinarily he would start every week, I just think coming back from injury, the circumstances, like Brian says, have him on the bench as a weapon. I want to see Jota starting. And against Rangers, Maeda's got to start. Now, the interesting thing about that is I don't think Maeda's one of our best players. I don't think he's one of our best wingers, but he's got all the attributes for this game against Rangers, where he cancels down a threat from their right-hand side. He allows you to play that high tempo, the high press, because of his work rate, never stops. And he's brilliant defensively for Greg Taylor, who obviously likes to go forward. So he needs to start. And then the question is on the right-hand side. Haksabanovic hasn't done enough. For me, he's never a right winger from what I've seen. Jota fit starts on the right, and Abada would be brilliant to have again, similar to Hatate, on the bench, just in case at that 60 to 65 minute mark, things aren't quite working out. It would be great to have they two, because they're game changers. And by the way, I think Haksabanovic is better off the bench at the minute as well. Bring him on for maybe Maeda on the left-hand side at some point. But yeah, fully contradictions, Natasha. I'm going to go with Iwata, McGregor and O'Reilly for my midfield 3.
Yeah, no, I think I have to probably agree with you on that. I don't think Aaron Moy is playing as well as we're used to him at the moment, so I don't think I put him in to start. And Hatate has probably been out just too long for me. It's hard. I'm very on the fence with Hatate. I'd love to see how he's looking in Lennoxtown. If I had the vision that Ange does of watching him train and play it throughout the week in Lennoxtown, I would make my mind up a little bit easier. But we don't have that. But thankfully, Ange does, and we always trust him to get it right, because 9.9 times out of 10 he does. Another player that you brought up there that I want to speak about a bit more is Haksabanovic, because I was looking back at some of the content that we've put out with Haksabanovic over the season, and when he first joined, I was at that press conference at Celtic Park to speak to him. And the question that I put to him was about his position and where he preferred playing and where he thought he was most effective. And he said that was as a number 10. And that's where he saw himself playing. And I think you're right. He has been a lot better off the bench. And it's something that we just mentioned with Rocco Vata as well, is that it's a very different scenario coming on to play the last 20 or 30 minutes against a tired fullback who's just been running up against some of the wingers that we have at our disposal for the previous 60 or 70 minutes. From the start, I haven't been overly impressed with Haksabanovic. I don't think he's quite having the impact that he does off the bench as he does when he starts. And maybe that's because, like you just touched on, Paul John, maybe it's because we're not utilising him properly. Maybe it's because we're not playing him in the position to get the best out of him.
I think it is that he's undoubtedly talented. We have seen it. And I know, was it November he got the Player of the Month award, and he looked really good in the 4-2 game against Dundee United. Got a couple of goals that day, I think. And, you know, it's interesting because now that you mention it, I remember the question. It was very good to get that out of him, the fact that he thinks he's a number 10. And he definitely looks far more suited to that. You know, he's just not that type of player, Natasha, that can go toe-to-toe with a full-back, beat him with a trick, beat him with pace and get the ball. And it's not happening for him right. And we missed Jota massively. It actually shines a light on just how important Jota is. So, yeah, number 10, but is there room for him? I think Brian and I have discussed that previously. Is there room for is that a luxury? I guess is what I'm asking. Is that a luxury in an Ange Postecoglou team? John Hughes has also said he's a bit concerned that he might slip through the cracks. I hope he doesn't. He's undoubtedly talented, but I think the playing him out of position has made him look bad. But the other option would have been, I guess, to play Rocco Vata, and that's a discussion we've already had. And if he's good enough, then he needs to be ready. By the way, on that, I actually felt that he was probably a wee bit overwhelmed with the amount of ball that he got. I'm talking about Vata, Natasha. I think he was maybe surprised at how often Moy and Johnston just kind of bailed out and gave him the ball as if to say, right, go and try and do something. And he was a wee bit overwhelmed. However, Haksabanovic, I agree, he's a number 10. I don't even think he's a left winger. I think he's a number 10. But do we have the luxury to play him there? I guess that's a big question.
We shall see. Moving slightly away from the semi-final selection, but linking in what we're saying on Rocco Vata, he does have, as we've just talked about over the course of that discussion there, he has a lot of good players in front of him, fully fit. When you're looking at the wingers that Celtic have at their disposal, regardless of whether we think they're wingers or not, they're getting played there. And you're looking at Maeda, you're looking at Jota, you're looking at Abada, you're looking at Haksabanovic. It's going to be difficult for Vata to break into that and break through. And while he is young and doesn't have the same sort of level of experience as they do, he isn't that much younger than players like Abada. And it'll be interesting to see for him next season whether his move is to stay at Celtic and really try and break into that first team despite all those players ahead of him who we talked about, or whether it's the right move for him to go out on a loan, perhaps to another team in the league. We know that he can't go back to playing in the B team. He can't go back to playing in the Lowland League. I don't think that would be very beneficial for his development. But I think what could be good is going out on a loan, maybe someone else in the league. And we've seen that work out really well before. For example, we've talked about Ryan Christie went to Aberdeen, Chris Ayer went to Kilmarnock, and now we've had Liam Scales having a relatively good season up at Aberdeen and scoring some wonderfully, definitely meant goals, Brian.
Of course he meant it. Of course he meant it.
Of course he meant it. Great goal. Or maybe he's lucky too. Maybe we can add him to the list of people who are lucky this season. But just talking about Liam Scales, Brian, he's a left-sided centre-back. We don't really have that, despite Starfelt doing really well in that position. I think he actually looked better on the right-hand side when Carter Vickers was out. But, Liam Scales could be someone who could come back and be a good addition to the squad. And, in the next segment of the show, we are going to have a wee chat about the players we've got out on loan and who could come back and who could do a job for us. But when you look at what Liam Scales has managed to do up in Aberdeen, and then you look at what Stephen Welsh has done by staying here, I just wonder if for a player like Welsh, he should have been on the same route as Liam Scales, and instead of sitting on our bench or sometimes not even on the bench this season, he could have been away getting game time somewhere. I think Welsh, to be honest, is probably one that's going to end up moving on this summer. But Brian, could Scales come back and do a job?
No for me. I think he's a good player, but if we're looking at the squad before just now. So for me, anybody that comes in either has to have potential to be better than what we have or be better right away. I think Scales is a good player, but I don't think he's got the potential of Bernabei at left back. He's certainly no better than Taylor at left back. I don't think he's as good with the ball at his feet or as good in the air as Kobayashi. Even Starfelt, who I agree with you, his best position's right-hand side, is still better than the left. And I think, the question would be, is he better than, say, Bosch and Lowell? Is that be more a discussion? And again, I think Lowell's he's younger, he's got more potential, he's trained more with the first team. I give him a chance before out of Scales back. So I know that's like a hatchet job on Scales. And if you think that's bad, wait to see my opinions on some of the other loan players later out. But in regards to Vata, what's interesting is we spoke about, and I know we'll probably talk about it later, so I won't ramble too long, but just a quick question for you. If we're making the assumption that Jota and Abada aren't back, would you start Vata on a semi, or would you stick with Haksabanovic? I would start with Vata. I can explain later why, but I would start with him over Haksabanovic. But I'm just keen on your thoughts.
I think it's a big question to ask. I'm going to put it over to Paul John as well. I don't think I would. I think I would start Haksabanovic, only because I think he would be very, very targeted from the first minute. And I don't know if that would be the most beneficial thing to his development as a player, is to throw him into that sort of cauldron and put the pressure on him that would be on him. I remember, games gone by doing things like sticking Mikey Johnston up front on his own against Rangers and things like that. And you look back on that and think, that wasn't good for anyone, especially not Mikey Johnston. The expectation that you put on him to be a lone striker against Rangers at the stage he was in his career at the time, and the age he was, and the position that he actually naturally played in, to do that to him wasn't actually fair on him as a player, I don't think. And while we would be playing Vata in his more natural position, I still wouldn't do that to him at this stage, Paul.
No, this, it can kill a player. I remember Lewis Morgan as well. It was one of the worst cup finals ever, to be fair, but he was playing a lone striker's role, it was like a fish out of water. Rocco Vata is a natural there, but if Abada and Jota both don't make it, and like Brian says before, we don't really have an update on Jamesy Forrest's availability, but it just shows you how things change so quickly. He started the game at Ibrox and everybody was thinking, dearie me, I'd love James Forrest to be fit this weekend. And then again, you go against everything that you've already said about Haksabanovic, and you end up playing a Haksabanovic on the right. I mean, the thing as well with Haksabanovic, I just don't think there was an understanding between him and Alistair Johnston. We've had situations in the past where, you can see the link-up play either through Ralston and the right winger, or Johnston, the right winger. That wasn't there. It was breaking down. And again, not talking about a right back, and I've mentioned this, Matt O'Reilly, even, he plays a kind of a ball down the wing, which was, tailor-made for Haksabanovic to run onto, and Haksabanovic never moved. He just stood there, and the ball, trundled off for a by kick. So, I mean, would it make or break Haksabanovic? Probably not, because he's a wee bit more experienced. So I think that, I would start with him if indeed the only other fit right-sided forward was Vata. I would start with Haksabanovic, because I just think there's a wee bit more safety. And it goes against, I guess, what Kevin Graham said in the comments. If a player, it doesn't matter about his age, if he's on the bench, it means he's good enough. He should be playing, throw him in. It's happened in the past. Peter Grant made his debut against Rangers at Ibrox. A lot of players, you've got to step up. Alistair Johnston, yep, and it didn't affect him. So I guess the only other option would be to play Anthony Ralston on the right wing.
I'm not sure about that shout either. Interestingly, though, you mentioned players like Peter Grant. I was interviewing Joe Miller at Malone's on Friday night, which was a great event, and thanks to so many of the Acsom viewers who were there, it was great to meet you all. But one thing that Joe mentioned during the interview was about playing under Billy McNeil, and how one of the things that he was really big on was, if you're good enough, you're old enough. And that young players really did break through at the time. And he mentioned Vata specifically and said that he could see Ange taking the same sort of approach, and the same thing happening for Rocco Vata, seeing him get game time, seeing him be trusted, because he's training day in, day out with the squad. He's learning from them. He's part of that setup. So why shouldn't he be part of it at the weekends? And I totally appreciate that too. So it will be very interesting to see what happens with Rocco Vata. I still wonder if a loan next season is the right move for him. But talking about our players out on loan, I am going to bring up the list of players we do have, because Liam Scales at the weekend, obviously scoring that wonderful goal, made me have a think about the players we've got out and if any of them could come back. So I'm going to read you the list of players that we have out on loan and where they are at the moment. And then Brian, I'll come to you, and then Paul John as well. Will any of these ever come back and do a job for us? So we've got Barkas, who's on loan at Utrecht. Urahide is at Ostend. Soro is at Aruca in Portugal. Johnston, Victoria. Oluwayemi, we know he's in Cork. Otto at Dunfermline. Liam Shaw at Morecambe. Johnny Kenny at Shamrock Rovers. Liam Scales, we've talked about at Aberdeen. Adam Montgomery is still at St Johnstone. Ideguchi is at Avivspa, and I will not continue the pronunciation of that, but we know he's back over in Japan. And Ayeti is in Sturm Graz in Austria. a very long list of players out on loan, Brian, and some relatively high earners in there as well. For me, I'm not really seeing many on that list who are going to come back and make a significant impact. The one I probably have the highest hopes for in there is probably Mikey Johnston. He's been doing relatively well over there. He's getting a good write-up. We had one of the comments coming in earlier on YouTube saying that Mikey Johnston played 90 minutes against Sporting and assisted in a goal, which was later ruled out offside. But by all accounts, he is doing very well over there. Going back to that list, Brian, are there any for you who are going to come back and make an impact in Angie's side?
I think the one with the most potential is Oluwayemi. Although I'm not convinced the move to, was it Cork he went to?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that was the wisest move. I don't see what you're going to gain from that. Other than that, you may find Mikey Johnston comes back if Abada goes, depending on Vata. So don't mention Vata again, but if Abada goes and he says, right, I want to stick with Vata, you still need another backup, because then he was with Haksabanovic, Maeda, Jota, Vata. So Mikey Johnston might be the easy one to come in and fill in case of injuries. But if it was up to me, no, I think other than the Oluwayemi, there's none of them there that fills me with any confidence. Big hologram hands, earning an unknown amount of money a week. Sorrow, I forgot existed. And then it actually, Sorrow was a funny one. I remember he was, I think him and Turnbull were the players I was most excited about seeing under Ange when Ange was first coming in, because I thought they had the most potential to have a good season. So it shows how much I know. But no, Liam Shaw, Urhoghide was never good enough. I forgot his name. Japanese boy. Ideguchi, yes. My thoughts on him have been pretty clear. I never thought he was good enough to start. So, no, I don't see anyone coming back other than the young keeper, probably.
Paul John, I'll put that one over to you. Kevin Graham, humanist as always in the comment section, saying that list of names wouldn't make it out a ballot for a semi-final ticket. We all know they're hard to come by, maybe even harder than Celtic contracts. Paul John, the comments are relatively split on this in terms of who in that list could make an impact in Angie's side. And one that's coming up a lot is Urhoghide. But mostly, I think the comments are centering around players that we've touched on as well. And maybe for Liam Scales, Mikey Johnston could probably come back and have something to prove. Johnny Kenny even doing well over at Shamrock Rovers. But I'm not sure, Paul John, do any of them excite you?
Does any of them float my boat? I'm just going to say, before anybody thought I was being serious about Tony Ralston playing right wing, it was firmly tongue-in-cheek. There was a wee kind of moment of silence after I said it there. Anyway, tumbleweed, that's what it was. Running through them, apparently Barkas and Ayeti combined, Brian, are making 30 grand a week. That's their wages, which is just astonishing. That's astonishing. It's astonishing. It's a hideous amount of money, and it's wasted. And I think what I do is with Barkas, Ayeti and Sorrow, these are the guys that cost us the most money. A combined fee is something like 12 million quid. If we can get £1 million each for those players, get them off the books and move them on, because it's not going to work at Celtic. Then you've got, I think, Urhoghide and Shaw. No harm to the players, but they weren't Angie's players. They weren't Angie's signings. They were legacy signings that came in from Sheffield Wednesday. And I've heard a lot of good things about Urhoghide. I've only seen him in one competitive game for Celtic, and he was like, for me, he wasn't a footballer. He can't play football. I think he's maybe got the defensive qualities of winning headers and tackles, but Ange doesn't play that game. He needs somebody to be comfortable on the ball to spray passes around. I don't think he's got that. So those two players can move on. I think you've just got to look at the level that Liam Shaw's playing at the moment at Morecambe. He's not going to come back and break into that midfield that we've got. You've got a few youngsters in there that I think do have a chance. Adam Montgomery, can we still call Mikey Johnston a youngster? Probably not. Oluwayemi, I know, 25. He's a youngster to me. And Ewan Otu, these guys will come back because they've got longer contracts. They've got a wee bit more youth on their side. Mikey Johnston, who knows? Again, I think circumstances around the right-hand side, if Abada goes, you might find that he comes back for the first month or two and then ends up going out on loan again because he's got a long contract. But I mean, there isn't much, to be honest. Ideguchi, it's not worked out. He'll move on. And then, by the way, Johnny Kenny, closely monitoring his performances when he was at Queen's Park, he won't make it at Celtic. So I reckon he'll go back to Ireland, and we wish him all the best. So I guess the other one, the big question mark's Liam Scales, but again, recency bias because of that goal he just scored against Rangers. What I would say, Natasha, is we've been banging on Acsom for long enough to say more loans in our league, please, because they can't harm Celtic, but they can harm Rangers. So a player like, Johnson, and by the way, people say, it's about wages. It's not, because if you want a player out on loan, the club that gets them can pay £1 of their wages, and you can pay the rest, and you get game time in the Scottish League. Should they come back, they're playing at the level that they're going to come back to, and they can damage your challengers. And I think Scales is a great example of that.
Yeah, I think for a club like Celtic, the most important thing is about finding the right place for a player rather than making them pay a significant amount of the wages, which we are going to be signed up for anyway. I'm thinking about Rocco Vata. I don't think his wages are going to be deal breaking for many sides, but if they are, I'm pretty sure Celtic would rather cover the wages and have him playing out on loan at a sort of club that they want him to be playing at. And like Paul John said, I think it's relatively important that is within our league. That's the league that they're going to be playing at if they do break into the Celtic starting 11, and it gets them used to the way that the football is played here. And it has the added benefit if it harms their competitors. They won't be able to play against us, but they are quality players who will still be able to play against everyone else, which is only going to be a good thing. I think for me, when choosing a team like that, again, taking the example of Vata, is making sure that he's playing at a team where his style of football is suited. I can see relatively little benefit to a player like him going out to another team in the league who spend 90% of their game defending. I'd like to see him get, to a team who's maybe more in the top six, who attack more, who use their wingers more, and that needs to be beneficial for his development, Brian, as well, because it's that balance, isn't it, between having him at Lennoxtown, training under coaches like Ange and John Kennedy and Gavin Strachan, and also training with the players that he's got around him, learning from players like Maeda, learning from Jota, learning from Abada, even Haksabanovic. That's valuable in itself, but the game time, I think, is even more valuable.
Yes, I kind of disagree with loaning players out to other teams in Scotland, except maybe keepers, because keepers need to do more saves. But I think if you look at Motherwell, for example, say if Rocco Vata goes on to Motherwell and they finish top six and they're behind the ball all the time, or they're not playing great football, or they're not training at the same intensity, I just don't see the merit. And I think that, Mikey Johnson, he's went to Portugal, Portuguese top flight, by all accounts playing well. That's an interesting loan move, because then you may be in a league that's playing good football or training at a certain level. But, would you say that, I don't know, say Boston Lawal, training and playing with Angie's team every day with these players is better or worse than training with, guys like St Johnstone? For me, I don't see the merit. Loaning players is fine, but I just don't see the point of loaning to other Scottish teams, because no other team in Scotland plays the way we do, or trains the way we do, or has as much possession as we do, or has to break up a press as much as we do. So I just don't see the merit, personally. And I know people point to Aya and Ryan Christie's examples are, players that were loaned out came back better, but they were very specific circumstances. And that's I don't know how many players Celtic have loaned out to other teams in the past. I mean, half of them are about ex-Celtic youth players. So I can't see the merit in loaning players out. And it's the same way, and it's a criticism of Celtic at the moment, loaning players out to the Irish League as well. No disrespect to the Irish League, but what's Johnny Kenny, Oluwayemi, going to learn playing at Cork City or Shamrock Rovers? For me, I can't see the merit in it. Maybe I'm wrong, and I'll find out if I'm wrong, but I just don't
Well,
see
we'll put it to the comments. If you are watching along on YouTube Live, thank you. We have enjoyed bringing your comments up on screen. If you're watching on catch up, please do still comment and let us know what you think. Tell us, loan players, do any of those players in that list, do you think they'll make it at Celtic Park? And coming on the debate between Paul, John, Brian, we've got different views. Should our players be loaned to other teams in Scotland? Let's hear what you've got to say on that as well. As an interesting debate. But before we finish up today, I want to talk about the Celtic women's team because they have been doing us proud lately. And what a difference 10 days makes. 10 days ago, Celtic were getting ready to go away to Glasgow City with the prospect of going 11 points behind, and Glasgow City were favourites for that game. They hadn't been beaten all season. Celtic hadn't managed to beat them, and a defeat there would have been the league pretty much over. And as we know, we won that game 4-2, and since then the gap has narrowed even further. So now it's just 2 points between us and Glasgow City. There's 6 games to go, including a home game against Glasgow City, and now the title race is very much in our hands. We know that all we need to do is win our remaining games, and we've won the league for the first time as a professional club. That would be an absolutely incredible achievement, and we all do hope that the girls do that, and it's certainly not an impossible ask. We've got Rangers at home, we've got Glasgow City at home, but now we've beaten both of those sides, and we can go on and do it again. At the weekend, we beat Glasgow City again in the Cup semi-final to progress to the final against Rangers. So a double is very much on. So, in 10 days to have managed to achieve that and have the turnaround we have in terms of the narrative about where the women's team were is really exciting. And I think it's deserved. The football that they've been playing, I know that both of you have managed to catch bits of it here and there. The football they are playing is really good, and it's something that Fran has banged on about for the last few months, is that he fully believed that his side were playing the best football, and that would come to fruition eventually. And over the last 10 days, we're starting to see that. And delighted for Fran at the way that the last 10 days has gone. I'm sure we've seen some of the clips on social media. There was a fundraising event in the Kerrydale at the weekend for the women's team. And after the win, the girls and Fran came straight back to that fundraising event so that they could celebrate with the fans. Fran was even showing his moves on the dance floor. They were loving it. And that connection that they have with the fan base is absolutely fantastic. Fran, again, we've talked about him before in the show, but it's really great to see a guy who's, really gets the club, who's really bought into it, who really loves it, who loves his team and his players, and is desperate to win this cup double. And I'd encourage everyone to get along and support the girls for this title run-in. The support really can make the difference. It means the world to the players. Celtic are selling a 4-match package for the home games that are left. It's good value. This weekend, unfortunately, the game does clash with the men's game. The scheduling issues are one for another show in itself. But the following game is Thursday, the 4th of May. We play Rangers at home, massive in the context of the title race. The game will be at Excelsior Stadium in Airdrie. So I really do encourage people to get along to that. And Paul, we're proud patrons of the women's game here at Acsom. And how good is it to see the girls doing so well and having such an exciting end to the season?
It is, because I remember during the season looking back on the double win and thinking, how disappointing is it going to be if you follow that up with nothing? Because for a while it looked as though it was going to be a disappointing season. And like you say, I think the key here is Fran stuck to his principles with regards to the style of play, and it's come to fruition. I think I know that we beat Glasgow City in one of the cups last year, didn't we, in the cup final? But I think this season it was a huge test. You've got to give credit to Glasgow City. This is a team that don't have that huge club behind them, and they've done so well. And they were definitely the benchmark when Celtic went professional. But I think what you're seeing this season is that slowly but surely, Natasha, we're building up to the point where we're at the same standard, but at the same level. And if we can win the league, wow. I mean, what that means for next season, budgeting, Champions League. And you hope that they're able to market the game, because we know how badly the men's game's marketed. We spoke about that. We opened up the show today talking about it. And you just hope they can market this game a lot better, because you imagine having a right healthy crowd at Hampden. It'd be brilliant. It'd be amazing to see. And as you say, we're patrons. We fully support it. Fran Alonso, he's a charismatic guy, and you buy into him. You buy into him, and by extension, you just want them to do so well. So I'm going to say another double this season, Natasha. I'm going to be very positive.
I would absolutely love that. Here's hoping. And again, the support that we can give to the women's team is absolutely massive. So anyone else out there who wants to go along and do that, please do look at social media channels and get along and support the girls when you can. But that is our up. So we need to wrap up there. A different lineup for a Tuesday. Who knows what we will look like next Tuesday? We might mix it up a bit again. But for now, Brian, Paul, John, thank you very much for joining me on this Tuesday afternoon.